Eyewitness claims Amy Eskridge working at secret underground facility and wants info released. Biggest UFO ET secrets locked away in private corporations. Representative Burchett, people are trying to block UFO disclosure, worried about the disruption to religions. Chief Exorcist of Washington Archdiocese. Most of these UFO sightings are demons. They will try to manipulate us. These stories are more on Exopolitics Today, the week in review.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the June 6th edition of Exopolitics Today, the week in review. It has been a very interesting week. Lots has been happening as far as some of the UFO issues that are being discussed around the world and on the Twitter feeds. Now, what didn't happen this week was that there was not a third drop on the war.gov/UFO site. And so people are wondering, is there going to be a third drop? So that's something we will discuss. Let me begin with the first story I want to look at from my Twitter feed, which is this interview that Jesse Michaels did with a US Army intelligence remote viewer who is very well known in remote viewing circles, having been one of the original military grade remote viewers that has been talking about remote viewing data and how that has been used in the military world for decades to gather intel. And so remote viewing is, in my view, an independent way of intelligence gathering on events and people that are happening without physically being there, where there's a part of oneself, the consciousness is transferred and intelligence is gathered. So it is a science that is taken very, very seriously by the military intelligence community, but it is widely dismissed or debunked by the general public, who see it as just kind of like psychic nonsense. So let's listen to what Lynn Buchanan had to say in this interview with Jesse Michaels.
If we develop our psychic ability, we are going to be a power in the universe, because we can see way into the future, anywhere in space. That's why our friends want us out there, and our enemies don't want us off this planet.
You have experienced so much, both in the world of remote viewing. You are the inspiration for The Men Who Stared at Goats, an incredible George Clooney movie about a psychic spy stopping a goat's heart. So you must have had a very high clearance.
Oh yeah, I had one of the highest clearances, not only for the remote viewing, but for other stuff that will never be talked about.
You remote viewed alien bases.
The 4 major alien bases on the Earth, one in Mount Hayes, Alaska, Mount Zeal in Australia.
Secret mountain near Bradshaw Ranch in Sedona, Arizona. Mount Inyangani is another alien base. Have you ever seen humans and aliens working side by side in a non-remote viewing capacity?
Yeah, one of the, what they call the insectoids.
Wow.
It was sitting in a row of humans that were at the positions working some equipment.
Whoa. You've seen a UFO inside a hangar.
That's where I came across this control panel, and that's when I said, hey, that's out of a UFO.
So how do you fly a UFO?
An impression of a hand on it, where you put your finger over the hole, controls the ship. The alien was there. He took me up front. He was the pilot. So I tried it, and I learned how to do it.
people like you with high psi powers, elite level skill.
Yeah.
You can do a lot.
We can change the weather anywhere in the world.
This takes mutually assured destruction to a whole new level.
The Russians look across the battlefield and kill their enemies by stopping their hearts. Our government was afraid of us. With the remote viewing, there's no more secrets.
So there you have a very interesting segment from this interview that Jesse Michaels did with this very famous remote viewer. And Lynn Buchanan, I mean, he had many experiences, and you heard some of those experiences. But the important point is that remote viewing is taken very, very seriously by government agencies for intelligence gathering purposes, and that extraterrestrials themselves recognize the kind of advanced remote viewing abilities we have, and different governments use it to varying extents. And he mentioned the Russian government using remote viewers to do things in addition to gathering intelligence for stopping people's hearts. That's really more like a remote, well, that's remote influencing or remote assassinations. These are the sorts of things that very skilled psychics can do. So remote viewing is definitely something that we need to really take into consideration when we are trying to find out about extraterrestrial life, what they're doing here, UFO bases around the world, and so forth. Now, one of the things that is not really covered is just how much remote viewing is used, not just by the military intelligence community, but also by major corporations. And remote viewers, I mean, they're able to gather intelligence on the stock market, precious metals, and also used to protect VIPs from other remote viewing teams who may be corporate spies. So there are other people who are protecting those high value assets, VIPs, corporate executives, inventors, whoever it is that may be of interest to a peer competitor, to another country, who may be using remote viewing to get intel on that person. And there will be remote viewing teams assigned to protect one. So that's how seriously remote viewing is taken. And so we really need to use more remote viewing in our exopolitics research. And that's something I'm very happy to say I've been doing for some time. I've been interviewing a few remote viewers, and I will be using remote viewers for gathering intel on some very important exopolitics topics. The launch of the aliens.gov website created quite a stir. It was something that before its launch, people had speculated was going to be dealing with extraterrestrial life. And when it was launched, at first glance, it seemed to be talking about extraterrestrial visitors. But once the whole thing was launched and you got to read through it, it became clear that what we're really talking about here is illegal aliens. But it was crafted in such a way that it was making it look like this was aliens who had kind of like infiltrated human society, involved, and that there was these kind of flying saucer craft involved in abducting people. And it made it look like, well, the flying saucers were abducting people and taking them back to their country of origin, and that these extraterrestrials living among us and taking our jobs and not being known, that had happened, that had been happening since 1966, which was a very interesting year for this to have occurred. And if you look at the literature on 1966, it wasn't when the illegal aliens issue began. It began at the turn of the 1800s, and certainly much later, say during the Clinton administration. So what happened in '66? Something else was happening, and what I want to draw your attention to about this aliens.gov website was that really it was a double entendre in my view. It wasn't just talking about illegal aliens and tracking them, finding out which states they were living in and been arrested in, and how many had been deported. It was also drawing attention to the existence of extraterrestrials living among us. So this is a very interesting phenomenon. It is something that I discussed in my very last webinar, Alien Secrets webinar, that is now available on Crowdcast and Patreon, where I discussed this process whereby in the 1960s, there was a government study done, actually a military study conducted by NATO, which concluded that extraterrestrials were living among us. And that it was a big problem because some of them looked so much like us that they could infiltrate human society. So this was something that was a big problem that emerged in the mid-1960s. And I think this is why on the aliens.gov site, they refer to 1966 as when the problem began, because that's pretty much when this cosmic top secret NATO study came out called the Assessment. And Command Sergeant Major Robert Dean was the one that first revealed that. And so that's something that I believe is really at the heart of what this aliens.gov website is, that it's a double entendre. On the surface, it seems to be all about tracking illegal aliens, finding out where they've been arrested and their deportation from the United States. But it's also about this unknown problem, which is the existence of these extraterrestrials living among us. So aliens.gov government website is not the way a lot of critics believe. A lot of UFO researchers were very upset by the launch of this. They thought, well, this is the Trump administration really trolling the UFO community. And it's not the case at all. I think this is the way in which you can drop a really major secret without upsetting the general population too much, because the news that some extraterrestrials look just like us and are living among us, I mean, that can create paranoia. So better to get that information out there in a way that's introduced into people's minds but doesn't make it serious, as the aliens.gov website has effectively done. All right, so here is an announcement I made back on May 30. So that was something that really set off a firestorm, because what I announced here was that there's a new eyewitness that has come forward who has said he physically met with Amy Eskridge, the deceased scientist who was working on anti-gravity that in 2022 allegedly took her life. So this person contacted me and shared that information. And so I announced that this was something I was going to be studying, and I would be releasing a paper on that in about 4 or 5 days. Well, it set off a firestorm of criticism, and it went viral. There were like approximately 800,000 views and nearly 1,000 comments. And a lot of the comments were very, very negative. I mean, people were saying, well, you know, Sala, you're just incredulous to believe anything. You're trying to kind of like benefit of the death of this young scientist, and people didn't really consider the possibility that this could be real. And so the intensity of the comments kind of like made me think that something else is up here. This is not just normal people, because I've got a lot of people that were very happy, very thrilled at the possibility that Amy Eskridge was alive. Does this mean other alleged dead scientists or missing scientists are still alive? So people are, many people were very happy by this possibility, but I got so much negative feedback that I really thought something else is up. And when I published the follow-up study that dropped on last Wednesday, I only got a fraction of this. There were 20,000 views, and that's that's a 40-to-1 ratio, like those that responded to the announcement versus those that actually read the article that I was announcing. And it's like very, very strange. Why would that happen? How could you have people expressing an interest in this story that I announced, that there is information from an eyewitness that Amy Eskridge is alive and that he met her twice, and she shared all this information? How could people express an interest in that story, but yet when the story drops, there was only a 40th of the traffic? And so that makes me think that the reaction, that a significant number of this 800,000 or so viewers and the 1,000 or so, 900 comments to this article were bots, were operatives, intel operatives. And it's like, well, what is it precisely about this story that could trigger such a reaction from web bots, the intel community? What are they trying to hide? What is it that they want to distract people from and dissuade me from investigating further? Because when you get a ton of criticism for something, it really makes you sit back and think, well, what am I doing wrong here? But all I was doing was just releasing this announcement that this new eyewitness was telling us that Amy Eskridge was alive, that she was working at a secret underground facility, and that she was releasing new physics principles or new fundamental forces of nature. And that makes me think that some group does not want that information coming out. Whether it's Amy Eskridge still being alive, whether it's that there is a massive spaceport under Green Mountain, Alabama, which is adjacent to Huntsville, the new home of US Space Command, or whether there are these additional 4 fundamental forces of nature, in addition to the 4 that are known in mainstream science. Someone or some group does not want that information coming out. And so I think that's why this particular announcement got so much attention, because I've been announcing interviews and studies for years, hundreds of interviews. I've never got this kind of reaction. Something's definitely up. Okay, so here's where I again talk about this upcoming announcement, and I'm reacting to the blowback I got when I announced the upcoming article I was going to do, or commentary I was going to do on the eyewitness claims regarding Amy Eskridge. And I pointed to something that I discussed at length in the commentary that I released on Wednesday, which is this mission that Jorge Pabon did to an underground spaceport in the corner of Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee, that I later speculated to be Green Mountain, and JP agreed with that. But he talked about this massive underground spaceport there that had these Nordic extraterrestrials, and they had like hundreds of spacecraft that were there, flying saucer type craft that were at this spaceport. So that's a interview I did with JP back in 2023 an update where we talked about that underground spaceport. So with this new source coming forward, and he's going to be anonymous for about a month. He said that in about a month he'll reveal himself. But right now he's doing this to protect his identity, to protect he and his wife, because he's been suffering a lot of harassment since his meetings with this person claiming to be Amy Eskridge. Right now, here is an article that is published by Christopher Sharp on his website, Liberation Times, and he talks about the revelation that RFK is very interested in the UFO issue and that he is part of President Trump's inner circle who supports the extraterrestrial disclosure initiative that the White House is involved in. So Sharp has his sources saying that there are these people in Trump's inner circle that are really pushing for UFO disclosure, and RFK is among that group. Now, why RFK Jr.? Why would he be involved in this push for UFO disclosure? I think it's probably got to do with the fact that RFK's Jr.'s father, the former Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, was actually being briefed at the Attorney General's office by Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso, who revealed this in an interview where he was giving RFK regular updates on a classified project in the U.S. Army's intelligence division. They had a foreign technology desk, and Philip Corso headed that at the time. And at that foreign technology desk, they had recovered spacecraft. Well, they had from the recovered spacecraft from the Roswell incident in 1947. And what they were doing was that they were seeding some of the debris to different corporations that were working on areas that were relevant to that recovered debris. So, for example, they seeded some of the materials to companies working on metamaterials, so that you could have new types of plastics being developed. You had fiber optics also being developed at that time, so they shared some of the craft remains that had to do with fiber optics, laser technologies. So there was a whole range of technologies that recovered from the Roswell that were being seeded into the corporate world to help them move forward in their studies or in these kind of breakthrough technology projects that were underway in these different corporations. So right there, that's the article on Christopher Sharp's Liberation Times website. Definitely worth taking a look at that. And so we do have an idea of why RFK Jr. is part of this inner circle, because I believe he was told by his father, the former Attorney General, because Robert Kennedy Jr. was a teenager at the time of his father's assassination, that his father had learned some incredible information about the UFO issue. Okay, so here is something that Congressman Eric Burleson shared on his X feed. I've been saying for months, if you want to keep something secret, you don't keep it where Congress can find it. Which is in the world of the military intelligence or in any federal agency. You put it in private hands. That's why I'm targeting federally funded research centers like MITRE, RAND, and MIT Lincoln Labs. These organizations do billions in government work. They owe the American public answers. So Eric Burleson is absolutely correct. He got good good intel here, advice, presumably from David Grush, who is a senior advisor to Eric Burleson, that if you want to really get your hands on where all the secrets are, then you've got to start putting pressure on these private organizations, these federal contractors such as MITRE, RAND, MIT, and others, because that's where the secrets are. This is where FOIA doesn't apply. This is where Congress can't demand access to records, because this is proprietary information in these corporations. But because they are federally funded research centers, it means that there is a means for Congress to put pressure on these organizations to release what they know. And if you have an individual like David Grush quietly advising behind the scenes, saying, look, MITRE has its hands on this particular project and RAND has its hands on another particular project, you can demand those organizations release those files. Otherwise, they'll be punished by having federal funding cut. So that is a very powerful means of pressuring these private corporations to release what they know concerning UFO ET secrets. And there is the very famous case of Mr. X, who was a Project Camelot whistleblower who came forward, I believe it was in 2006. He was he was the very first Project Camelot witness. And he talked about how he was hired for 6 months by a private contractor to archive all of the UFO files and materials that contractor had got from the military intelligence community. So after the military intelligence community gathers all these files and analyzes it, then it's given to private corporations who store it in vaults and use it for their reverse engineering projects. Okay, so here's a story concerning a more Australian media coverage of President Trump's released UFO files. So there was a current affair in Australia, which is a pretty big program, and it talked about how there was this initiative in the United States concerning UFOs, and so the Australian public are learning that the UFO issue was not nonsense after all. So I'm going to play that clip for you.
I could not believe what I was seeing. It was so massive.
Are there other intelligences, other life forms out there trying to contact us?
Sightings from military officials, pilots, even astronauts. Secret records dating back 80 years.
President Trump has finally said, look, we're just going to put it out there, which I think is the right answer, because this has been something that has been denied for far too long. I think we're much better off with more transparency than trying to deny the reality of which we all know exists.
Why has it been kept a secret for so long by multiple administrations?
Because they could. Because these people had the means.
So there you have the Australian media showing some interest in the UFO disclosures that are happening in the United States. So that's very important that you have other countries starting to take seriously what is happening in the US on the UFO disclosure front. And I hope that Australia does become much more involved in these releases, because there are many secrets in Australia. Earlier, when I showed you the clip involving Lynn Buchanan, he talked about Mount Zeal in Australia, which is actually very close to Pine Gap in the Northern Territory. And that Mount Zeal has a major UFO base under it. There are many UFO sightings around there. And so certainly there are extensive files and studies conducted by the military on what is at Mount Zeal. And so hopefully that will eventually be released. Now, there's another member of the US Congress who's come out and talking about these classified UFO files, that briefings that she has attended. And she says that the public release so far that we've seen is underwhelming in comparison to what has been shown in these classified briefings. So this is Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, and she is now very interested in the UFO phenomenon based on these classified briefings she is getting. And so this confirms that what has been released so far on the war.gov/UFO files releases, 2 batches so far, that's underwhelming in comparison to what has been revealed in these classified briefings. So let's listen to what Congressman Boebert has to say on this issue.
We've got a lot to talk about. So let's talk about this Pentagon release and UAPs. What is your take on all of that?
Yes, well, I heard it best just today. I had a little bit of time in between laundry switching, and I was watching a reel, and this guy said, I trusted and believed in aliens a lot more before the U.S. government started saying they were releasing the information. And I could find a lot of truth in that, but there's a lot of frustration. Every skiff that I've gone into, there's always a caveat and excuses of different contractors who have onion-like clearance, and not everyone is read into everything. And so while one department or one contractor may be familiar with one layer to the onion, there's so many more beyond that. And I do believe that the files that were released recently, while historic, are underwhelming, especially given what I have seen in classified briefings that I'm not yet at liberty to fully disclose. But there's a lot more that is certainly unexplained. There is a lot of underwater activity, and I'm excited for some of that to come out and have the American public give their input to it. And some of this, just very well may be technology that we have tapped into that we aren't letting our adversaries know about. But most of the things that we are seeing, we are not familiar with other countries having this sort of technology, or even ourselves. And there's a lot that is unexplained, and some that is even supernatural.
Okay, so there you have Congresswoman Amy Boebert sharing a little bit about what she now has seen in these classified UFO briefings that have been conducted for members of the US Congress. And so she has now come on board saying, yes, this should be released. So, this is now just a growing trend within the US Congress. More and more members have been participating in these classified briefings, seeing material that convinces them that this phenomenon is very, very real and that more has to be released. So very important. Here is an interview I did with Jen Sullivan, who has just come out with her 3rd book dealing with her past life memory of living in a pre-Diluvian civilization or era when the Watchers openly appeared. And so she described the Watchers as these giants who appeared out of a spacecraft. They wore these black exoskeletons. They had advanced technologies. And what they did was that they would raid these human colonies of the firstborn women, that they had struck a deal with the elders of these colonies, these communities, and basically the deal was that the firstborn woman from any family would be given to the Watchers for breeding purposes. So apparently the Watchers would have sexual intercourse with the women, and they would produce these giant offspring who would then go on to be playing big roles in ruling those societies. So this matches what was told in the book of Enoch and in the book of Genesis, that talks about the fallen angels intermingling or breeding with the daughters of men and producing the Nephilim, who became men of renown. So the Nephilim became the rulers, the future rulers of humanity, and they were giants. And so here you have someone, Jen Sullivan, who has these past life memories that she recalls very vividly about her life there. So her book is available now online. It is something that I definitely recommend you take a look at. So the title of Jen Sullivan's book is The Daughters of Man. It's available on Amazon, and definitely it will be very entertaining. Here is a story concerning Tim Burchett saying that there are people trying to block UFO disclosure because they're worried about the disruption to religion. So let's listen to what Tim Burchett has been experiencing or knows about.
I think there could be some economic incentives to it. They're going to take this high road and say it's going to disrupt religion and all this other stuff. I just don't buy that as a Christian. That doesn't affect me one bit. I just think they need to disclose everything and quit telling us they don't exist when they're spending tens of millions of dollars on programs that obviously studying them. We have some of the best pilots in the world who claim they do exist in sworn testimony, and they seem to just kind of brush that aside. So, yeah, there's a lot of arrogance in government, and there's a lot of, the Bible says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And I think that's what you're seeing, some really foolish behavior by some very arrogant people. And, of course, you got the war pimps, too. Imagine if you had an energy source that was that we could heat our homes in the winter and cool them in the summer. We would not be in all these wars for oil. We wouldn't be overseas. We could mind our own dadgum business. And there's a lot of things behind it, I think, if you dig down deep enough. But ultimately, this President Trump, has kept his word. He said he was going to do it. I talked to him on the phone, and he said, "Yeah, dadgum it, we're going to get him out. We're going to. I don't have any problem with that."
I mean, a lot of people.
So there you have Tim Burchett talking about this opposition to UFO disclosure coming from those claiming to be Christians or associated with some major religion. And so this is a problem that there are those that are opposed to UFO disclosure because it will be disruptive to major religions. And I think this is a way, just another tactic, another tool, as Tim Burchett is clearly intimating, by the deep state who are opposed to disclosure for other reasons, not that it would really disrupt religion, because as Tim Burchett said, that he is a Christian, a committed Christian, and he doesn't see it impacting his faith at all. And I think that's pretty much correct, but we'll be coming back to this issue very shortly. Okay, so here is a short we did with that was done on Gene Decode from an interview we did a month ago, where he discusses claims surrounding portal systems and Stargate technologies connected to underground facilities in Iran. So he is here confirming that there is something under Iran, which is really the purpose of the strikes and the conflict that we are witnessing now in Iran. So let me play this short for you now. So with these portals in Iran, I also have heard from different sources that the Iranians were allowing, or kind of facilitating negative extraterrestrials or reptilians, draconians, that kind of coming through the portals, and that this was also one of the reasons why the US intervened, that they wanted to get control of that tunnel system so that they could prevent these negative extraterrestrials coming and going our planet.
Precisely. So you can't open a portal just anywhere you want. It has to be on at least a minor ley line confluence with, like a nuclear weapon. It has to be on a confluence with the timing of the ley lines that move from the equator, crossing those lines that are not moving. And so you can open it then. So they can tell you where a portal can be, and they know where they have been using them. So they can actually lock that down. And then on top of that, you have Stargate 10, that was in Iran, in the facility that you were along there near Quam, that they took out, and they got Stargate, the White Hats got Stargate 10 because they're bringing reptilians straight in through there, because you can't bring them in. Solar Warden, Radiant Guardian, Radiant Glory has locked down our star system, our solar system, and you can't get them in through craft. And so what they've been doing is using Stargate 10 and portals. And so now the White Hats have taken that, so that's locked down now, so they can't do that anymore either, because they, the reptilians are just like the rest of the cabal. They don't give up. They keep trying and trying and trying to find a way in and trying to find a way in over and over and over. So that's what you see going on with that.
So now we have an understanding of what the Iran war is really on about, that there are these stargates, these portals that are being used to allow this very powerful group of extraterrestrials known as the Draconian reptilians to come through, because they are not able to enter our solar system due to the Solar Warden and Radiant Guardian secret space programs protecting our solar system from external visitors coming back in, and the dark fleet that is associated with the former German colony in Antarctica. So instead, these portals are being used, and this is why the US took the actions it did, along with its Israeli partners, to really put pressure on the Iranians to allow access to their underground facilities. And I think that's what's been going on now, and that's really what is being negotiated in Iran. All right, so here's the report I did, the commentary I did on the eyewitness account that Amy Eskridge survived, or is working at a secret spaceport underneath Green Mountain, Alabama. And that this was a facility that she is allegedly running, and that in addition to things such as pilots being international pilots being trained on how to fly flying saucers, that also there were the discovery of 4 fundamental forces. Now, as far as these international pilots being trained, I just wanted to draw your attention to this particular article, or this update I did with JP from 2024, April 29, where he went to a underground facility in that region of Alabama, and he saw 30 international pilots that were being trained by these Nordic-looking extraterrestrials in how to fly these flying saucer craft that were controlled by this mind technology interface, that this was something that was happening. And apparently this is exactly what Amy Eskridge told my source, and that kind of matches what JP said. Now, the big question, of course, here is and the other important thing that I wanted to draw your attention to was that she described to my source these 4 fundamental forces that are not known to mainstream science. That mainstream science talks about electromagnetism, gravity, the weak and strong nuclear force. Those are the 4 fundamental forces of nature according to mainstream science. They belong to the so-called standard model. But she told my source that there is 4 additional forces that are being studied at this facility. One involves the Higgs field, another involves anti-gravity, another involves matter energy conversion, and the final involves being able to transfer consciousness through portals. Very, very interesting. We just talked about these Iranian portals, these stargates that were being used to transfer draconian reptilians long distances. So these portals do exist, and there's a physics behind it, and there are presumably formulas behind it. And presumably this lady who approached my source and said she's Amy Eskridge is running this mountainside facility where she is doing research on these 4 fundamental forces, as well as cooperating with these Nordic extraterrestrials. Incredible material. And of course, people will say, well, is there any evidence of this? I mean, is my source making it up? Or is this part of some elaborate psyop? Well, I think the best kind of like supporting evidence is this remote viewing that was done by Tony Rodriguez a year ago, just over a year ago, in November 2024, where he did a remote viewing, or he conducted or led a remote viewing involving 3 remote viewers who were given an alphanumeric target, which was an underground facility under Green Mountain, Alabama. So the targeter was Tony Rodriguez. So he was told, I want you to remote view what's underneath Green Mountain. So he assigned a set of alphanumerics. So it was a blind remote viewing conducted by 3 remote viewers. And they all 3 found that, yes, there was an underground facility there, that it involved hundreds of spacecraft, that Nordic extraterrestrials were involved, that there were portals involved. And here's the kicker, here's the important thing. It was run by a woman with black hair and tan skin. And that, I think, is very significant because it does support what my source was told about the Green Mountain being run by this woman saying she is Amy Eskridge. So that is very, very important. My source has met her twice, and he has been told that he will meet her again a 3rd time, and I'm looking forward to hearing from him what happens in that 3rd meeting, what he is told, and also being able to eventually do a interview with him, because he will reveal himself at some point. So that is something I'm looking forward to. But this is very much a story that is under investigation. But I think the confirmation of what Jorge Papon or JP has been saying is under Green Mountain, and the revelation of these 4 additional forces of nature, I mean, that is very important material. Now, here is something that was very, very interesting, and it kind of dovetails with this information that Tim Burchett was told, that there are people trying to block UFO disclosure because of the impact it will have on religion. So here is the chief exorcist for the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., who believes most UFO sightings are actually demons. So let's listen to what this exorcist has to say about extraterrestrials.
There's no question in my mind, personally, again, this is not de fide, but it's my personal belief that probably many, if not most, of these UFO sightings are in fact demons, and they can do things that we can't do, thus the speed and all sorts of things that human beings can't do. The reason why this is important is because they will try to manipulate us, again, as I said, behind the scenes. I had one woman come to us who lost her grandma. There's no question in my mind.
So there you have this Monsignor, chief exorcist, who is saying that most of these UFO sightings involve demons. Now, this is something that is actually contrary to what the Vatican has been saying for some time. If you go back to 2008, there were these leading Vatican astronomers, beginning with its chief astronomer, Father Gabriel Funes, And he was saying that extraterrestrials were more ethical than humans. And he gave his reasons for why he reached that conclusion, and that they could be baptized as brothers in Christ. And so this particular chief exorcist for Washington, D.C., believes that these UFOs involve demons. Well, it didn't take long, but the Vatican actually took action that the Cardinal McElroy removed Monsignor Stephen Rossetti as exorcist for the Archdiocese of Washington. McElroy said that statements made by Monsignor Rossetti linking UFOs to demonic presence and the center's recent use of social media gravely undermines the church's very precise teaching on the devil, demons, and exorcism. And in a recent, now deleted video, the one I just showed you, Rossetti said that it's my personal belief that probably many, if not most of these UFO sightings are in fact demons. So that's been deleted, and he was sacked from his position. So that was very welcome. And interestingly, it happened soon after he put that statement out there. So the Vatican is very sensitive to ensuring that its position on extraterrestrials is not slanted in any way by different members of the clergy. But clearly the Vatican does not hold this position that UFOs involve demons, and it seems that the Vatican is still holding on to that earlier position dating back to 2008 that the extraterrestrial phenomenon involves beings who are more technologically involved than us and also more ethically evolved than us. All right, so here is Jay Stratton, a former key member of this group of military personnel that were studying or heading these various programs to study the UFO phenomenon while in the military. So Jay Stratton said, "I'm excited to announce my memoir, Out of the Shadows, will be published by HarperCollins in North America on October 13, 2026. In the book, I break my silence to reveal everything I legally can about my investigations of UAP and non-human intelligent life on behalf of the US government and the profound impact my work had on me and my family. We are at a turning point in human history, and I am proud to play a role in opening the public's eyes to the truth and bringing about long overdue disclosure." So that's his book coming out in October of this year. And he is, I think, one of the most senior officials to have been involved in these classified UFO studies happening in the Pentagon. Now, there is kind of like some nuances here that we do need to explore. What Jay Stratton and others like Luis Elizondo, David Grush have been revealing is that one branch of the US military has been attempting to investigate the UFO issue, while another branch associated with the so-called legacy UFO program was blocking it. Now, that's consistent with claims going all the way back to the 1950s, where you had military officials or former military officials such as Major Donald Kehoe, who was a Marine, encountered something similar with what he called at the time the Silence Group. Others have talked about the Majestic 12 Group, and now they're referred to as the UFO Legacy Group or the Collins Group. Many different names, but essentially this is a group of officials that have very high security clearances and a lot of influence who are blocking UFO disclosure. Now, there's been a decades-long struggle between military intelligence officials who are either inside or outside of the loop of those cleared to know about these classified UFO programs. Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson is a prominent example of a senior official who was outside of the loop, as Dr. Stephen Greer first exposed. So Stratton will join Lou Elizondo, David Gruss, etc., in sharing more details of what was learned in his decade-plus struggle and more of the truth emerging about the recovery of crashed UFOs, non-human intelligence, and corporate reverse engineering efforts, etc. So that, those reading this book will naturally support these military guys fighting the good fight, Stratton, Elizondo, Grush, fighting against the modern incarnation of the Silence Group, the Majestic 12 Group, the Collins Group, whatever you want to call it today. But it would be a mistake to focus exclusively on the group of military intelligence insiders and their attempts to find out what's been really going on in the vast military-industrial complex. At best, what they have to reveal is very limited to what their clearance allows, and at worst, a limited hangout involving a good cop, bad cop psyop to deceive the public. So we need to keep that in mind here, that we got here one group of military insiders, fighting the good fight. We're going to find out what's really going on with the UFO phenomenon. We're going to release that to the public. We're the good cop here. You support us, and of course, the bad cop is trying to stop all of that. Well, this could very well be a psyop or a limited hangout, and I believe it is, really. I mean, I want to be frank with you. I think it is a limited hangout. It's really designed to put out some of the truth, but hold back the most important truths for some later time. And I can understand that there's actually good sense in that. I don't want to condemn these people and criticize them. I mean, some have. I mean, Stephen Greer, for example, wanted to boycott the movie. The movie that just came out concerning UFOs, the Dan Farah movie that had 34 whistleblowers talking about the UFO phenomenon. I thought that was a limited hangout, but I think it's played a very important role. That the Age of Disclosure, that particular documentary, is playing a very important role in waking a lot of people up to the truth of this phenomenon, and that these deeper truths that I've been working on for 25 years now, these are things that will come a little bit later, but nevertheless, it is important to talk about them. So there have been hundreds of whistleblowers and witnesses who have come forward talking about secret space programs, agreements with extraterrestrial visitors, DUMs with massive spaceports. That's where we get genuine UFO disclosure as opposed to limited hangouts, etc., that Stratton and co. are releasing. So as I said, I think there is a place for these limited hangouts, these limited disclosures that former military officials such as Jay Stratton are performing, but we must never lose sight of the fact that there are hundreds of whistleblowers and witnesses who are talking about all these other things, the secret space programs, the massive spaceports under Green Mountain, for example, the suppression of new science principles and fundamental forces of nature, the existence of these DUMs, the training programs involving Nordic extraterrestrials with military pilots. All of that is happening, and there are people talking about it, people like Jorge Pabon, JP, this lady claiming to be Amy Eskridge that's in touch with my source, and many others that have had experiences with secret space programs are talking about that. So here is the final story I want to cover, and that concerns Steven Spielberg's upcoming movie Disclosure Day. Now, what he says in this short interview is very revealing about what I think is the narrative that's going to come forward in Disclosure Day. So let's play this clip for you.
To become more and more kind of realistic in the real world, something that seems so unreal and so virtually foreign is suddenly becoming a little more credible. And it wasn't that I was wanting to make an incredible movie. I wanted to make a credible movie about the whole UFO phenomenon, not a holistic review of UFOs through history, but from the perspective of very brave whistleblowers that are now, just now coming out and starting to say, there is a hidden truth. It's been hidden for 8 decades, and they are talking about it. And I decided to write this starting in 2023.
So there you have Steven Spielberg talking about how he wanted to create a credible movie about the UFO phenomenon because in 2023, he saw these whistleblowers coming forward talking about the UFO phenomenon, and that he now accepts that this is very, very real. Now, in my view, what Steven Spielberg just revealed is the narrative that his upcoming Disclosure Day movie is going to spin. It's focusing on new whistleblowers who are now coming out, and this will be based on people like Elizondo, Grush, Stratt, Eric Davis, and others who have been recently getting a lot of prominent media attention, and they have been sharing what they know about the UFO phenomenon. And it's along these lines that the UFO phenomenon involves extraterrestrials or interdimensionals visiting us in physical craft, some of which have crashed and are being studied by reverse engineering for reverse engineering purposes that have been unsuccessful so far. That we know of 4 types of extraterrestrial visitors, 3 of which are enigmatic and possibly dangerous. Perhaps that's where the strange clicking sound is all about. Predictive programming to buy into the threat narrative. So in the trailers for Disclosure Day, you hear this very strange clicking sound coming through the actress Emily Blunt, and that's supposedly some communication from the extraterrestrials, and it's a very weird sound. And some people believe that this is a form of mind control, predictive programming, and recommend not to watch it, not to watch Disclosure Day. So I certainly don't plan to be part of that first wave of viewers. I'm going to sit back and see what the public reaction is, and then decide at some point to watch it myself. But for now, I'm going to sit back because I'm very concerned that this could be some predictive programming to get you to buy into the threat narrative, and that's not very good. And so Spielberg, while he may be producing a film that's going to show that the disclosure issue is very real, the extraterrestrials are visiting us, it may in fact be doing some kind of predictive programming for the intelligence community. So I doubt we'll learn anything about secret space programs using reverse engineered technology that can be used for interstellar travel, agreements with ETs going back decades, space-time portals being used for instantaneous travel, deep underground military bases with large spaceports under strategic locations like Green Mountain, Alabama, new fundamental forces of nature that have been uncovered, etc. I don't think this Disclosure Day movie will cover any of those things. I think it's going to really focus on what this new crop of whistleblowers have been putting out, which, as I've already said, is, in my view, a limited hangout. But still, it's going to play a role in educating the public about the truth of extraterrestrial life, but it's going to be combined with some kind of predictive programming, mind control, and so that's something we need to be very wary of. So that's it for this week in review. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.